You wake up, not with a clear thought, but with a very vague sensation, as if someone had gently touched the edge of your sleep and then pulled their hand away immediately. There is no alarm, no calling voice, only a very soft, steady vibration repeating over and over beneath your body. The first sound you hear is not a human sound but something deeper, lower, like the breathing of a massive living being moving in the dark. The light filtering through your eyelids is not sharp, not harsh, but grey and muted, as gentle as an early winter morning when the curtains have not yet been drawn. In that moment you don't know where you are, and strangely enough that doesn't frighten you. If you are listening to this story late at night when your room has grown quiet and the long day has finally closed behind you, allow your body to relax just a little more. If this rhythm feels safe to you, gently tap like, share it with someone else who needs a peaceful night's sleep, and subscribe so that each evening there is always a place in history waiting for you to return to. Now we are not in a hurry. We have only just awakened. The first sensation that reaches you is the feeling of movement, not fast, not violent, but a slow, even rocking like a giant cradle, gently lulling the entire room along with you. The air around you feels cooler than at home, not cold, just cool enough for your skin to realize that this is not a familiar morning. You open your eyes slowly. The ceiling above you is lower than the one you're used to seeing. The paint is pale. There are no familiar objects. No old chair in the corner. No wall clock that has followed you for years. It takes a few seconds, then a few more before you realize that you are not at home. The thought arrives softly, without shock, without confusion, simply as a gradual awareness, like remembering that you are in a strange place that still feels safe. You lie still a bit longer and listen more carefully. Somewhere in the distance there is the quiet touch of metal against metal, the sound of light, deliberate footsteps, the presence of water, not water rushing through pipes, but something wider, deeper. The room you are lying in feels comfortably enclosed. The walls are not thick, but thick enough to separate you from the outside world. There is no traffic, no voices calling out in the street, no familiar rhythm of life on land. There is only you, and that steady motion. You begin to compare unconsciously. Your bedroom at home might be larger, filled with more objects carrying years of memory, but this room has something else, a sense of safe impermanence. Nothing here tries to be permanent. The bed is tidy. The small table is simple. The space is just enough for one person and very quiet thoughts. You realize that when you know you are only here for a short time, your body relaxes more easily. You don't need to control tomorrow, don't need long-term plans, don't need to carry your entire life with you. You only need to lie still in this first morning. The light in the room slowly grows clearer, not direct sunlight, but light that has passed through many layers across the deck, down corridors, through a small window before reaching you. You begin to remember where you are. You are on a ship, a very large ship, a ship moving away from land without requiring anything from you at all. The thought carries no worry, only a strange sensation of being carried. You are not the one steering. You are not the one deciding the direction. You are simply a passenger allowed to rest. In that moment, as your body fully understands this, your breathing naturally slows. No one is demanding anything from you. No one needs you to respond quickly. No one is waiting for you on the other side of the door. There is only this morning, only this rhythm of the ship, only this enclosed sense of safety. You remain still a little longer. There is no need to sit up, no need to think ahead, because the moment you are ready to open the cabin door, the memory of the day you stepped onto this ship will gently return, like a calm current flowing backward. And from there, we will move, together back toward the moment of departure. As you lie still in the cabin, letting the rhythm of the ship gently rock your body, the memory does not arrive as a clear image right away. It comes more slowly, softer like a thin mist, gradually spreading across the surface of water. You are not remembering anything. You are simply allowing the memory to drift back. The first thing to return is sound, not sharp sound, but a dense, muted mass of it, overlapping voices, suitcases rolling across stone metal, lightly striking metal, names being called and then dissolving into the open space. You recognize it as a crowded morning, full of motion, not quiet like the cabin now, yet in memory everything has slowed down as if time itself had grown tired after a long day. You see yourself standing at a harbor. The name does not matter, only the feeling. The wind carries the smell of salt water, damp wood, new fabric, and something harder to name, the scent of parting. The crowd does not push. They stand close, yet each person is inside a private world. Some speak constantly as if afraid silence might reveal something. Others are completely quiet, gripping the hand beside them. Some turn their backs, staring at the ship, unable to look behind them. Where are you in that crowd? You are not sure. perhaps slightly off to the side, watching more than participating. And then you see the ship, not from inside, not from a high deck, but from the ground, from the small human position. It does not need to move to feel immense. Simply standing there, it makes everything around it seem lower, slower. You do not think about engineering or engines or the future. You feel only one simple truth. This thing will carry me far away. The moment brings no great excitement, and no clear fear, only a quiet feeling, like standing before a door already open. Then it is time to step forward. No one urges you on, no one pulls your hand, but the line ahead begins to move. You approach the gangway, the narrow bridge between land and another world. The first step feels ordinary, just a step, yet the instant your foot touches it, your body understands before your mind does you are leaving. Not leaving a specific house or a familiar street, but leaving an old rhythm of life. You do not turn back, not because you choose not to, but because there is no need. What lies behind has completed its role. It brought you here, and that is enough. The sounds of the harbour begin to change. Voices grow distant, no longer distinct, becoming only a background pulse like waves heard from inside an enclosed room. You realize that even while land is still visible, you are no longer there. The feeling is not dramatic, carries no tears, only a calm confirmation. You have gone, and once gone, there is nothing that must be returned to. You remember standing still on the deck, unsure what to do next, not rushing to find your cabin, not eager to explore, simply standing there, letting your body adjust to the new state. Around you are strangers who do not know you and whom you do not know, yet you share something the same, leaving one shore together and not yet reaching the next. In that in-between space, no one needs to prove anything, no one needs to tell their story. It is enough to simply be present. This memory has no climax, no slow-motion scene, no grand promise. It is like a current flowing steadily, and precisely because of that it stays for a long time. As the memory gradually fades, you feel the rhythm of the ship beneath your body again. The cabin becomes clearer, the present moment wraps around you once more. And now, having travelled far enough in remembrance, having left the harbour in your mind, having crossed a boundary without looking back, you begin to notice where you are, not the deck, not the crowd, but the second-class cabin, the place, where you will live, sleep, and slowly come to understand how you are treated on this journey. As the memory of the harbour slips quietly into the background, and the noise of the crowd fully dissolves in your mind, you return to the very small space you are now standing in, the cabin. The door closes behind you without a loud sound, only a soft click, just enough to confirm that in this moment you have a place that belongs to you alone. You stand still for a few seconds before looking around, not because you are overwhelmed, but because your body needs time to recalibrate its expectations. This cabin is not what you once imagined a second-class space to be. The walls are panelled with light-coloured wood, not ornate but smoothly finished, without roughness, without the feeling of something temporary. The light in the room is gentle, not too bright, casting no harsh shadows, spreading evenly so that everything appears clearly without demanding attention. The bed rests neatly against the wall, the blanket carefully folded, the mattress not overly thick but thick enough to make you trust that your sleep will be complete. Beside the bed sits a small table not meant for grand work, only just enough to hold a book, a letter, or a glass of water before sleep. In the corner there is a wash basin, white porcelain, clean, unpretentious. You take all of this in slowly, not to inspect but to confirm a feeling. The feeling that here you are not treated as someone merely passing through. You remember earlier journeys, tighter compartments, narrower beds, places where you had to fold your body to fit the space rather than the space accommodating you, places where you were always aware that you were simply enduring. Here your body does not need to adapt so much. Everything is placed where it should be. The distances between objects do not force you to shrink. The room does not push you into a corner. You rest your hand on the wooden surface, cool, smooth, free of splinters, and a very small yet deeply important sensation settles inside you. You are being cared for, not in a luxurious way, with no excess decoration and nothing trying to impress, but through kindness expressed in material form. You realize this is not wealth. This is respect. You know you are not among the highest class on this ship. You do not have a grand room facing the open sea. You do not have a private sitting room, but neither are you pushed into dark corners, treated as secondary, or deprived of basic comforts. This cabin tells you something very clearly without using words. You are not wealthy, but you deserve rest. And for a person leaving land behind, moving toward an unknown destination, that knowledge is enough to bring peace. You sit down on the edge of the bed, the mattress yielding slightly, not too soft, not too firm, and your body responds honestly. Your shoulders drop, your back loosens, your breath deepens. No permission is required, no ritual, only the quiet recognition that here you can rest. You open your suitcase not to unpack everything, just to place a few familiar items on the table. A book, a small object brought from home, not as decoration, but as a reminder that you did not disappear when you stepped onto this ship. The cabin is small enough that you do not feel lost, tidy enough that you do not need to manage it. Everything is just enough, and just enough is a rare condition in ordinary life. Here no one urges you to use every minute, no one demands that you squeeze value from every experience. You may sit still, lie down, or simply look around without thinking at all. Time inside the cabin does not rush. It moves with the rhythm of the ship. Within that rhythm you slowly realize your very specific social position, not at the top, not at the bottom, but somewhere in between, where people are regarded as people, not by titles, not by wealth, but by care. You do not need to know who designed this room or how many others stayed here before you. It is enough to know that in this moment you have not been forgotten. And when that sense of sufficiency settles, when the cabin no longer feels unfamiliar but becomes a temporary place to live, you begin to notice details beyond this small room. A very soft sound slips through the door, not noise but the quiet pulse of the ship's life, and from those corridors outside where electric light is silently ushering in a new era, your story begins to open further. When the sense of calm from the second-class cabin has had time to spread through your body, when the neatly made bed and the smooth wooden wall at your back no longer feel unfamiliar, you open the cabin door very gently, not to rush forward but simply to widen the circle of living space around you, and the moment you step outside, a long corridor appears in soft light, the wooden floor stretching straight beneath your feet, silent, steady, as if long accustomed to supporting the slow steps of resting travelers. The walls on either side are light wood, neither glossy nor dark, everything held at a just right balance that doesn't demand attention, yet never disappears. And then you notice what makes you pause for an extra beat: the light. Not flickering candlelight, not oil lamps leaving smoke clinging to the air, but electric light, clean, even filling the corridor as though it has always been there. You stand still for a few seconds to let your eyes adjust, not from overwhelm, but because your body is recalibrating its sense of night and day, dark and light, since this light does not force you awake nor lull you into shadow. It simply exists, steady and patient. As you take another step forward, the light ahead seems clearer. When you ease back, it softens, and in that moment a gentle, almost childlike surprise brushes against you. Not loud, not something you need to share, just the quiet feeling that this world is operating with more care for people than you are used to. You don't think about wires or switches or machinery. You only feel that here you don't need to grope through darkness, don't need to wait for someone to light the way. The light arrives when you need it and stays without asking for attention. You continue slowly along the corridor, your footsteps barely sounding the floor, seeming to understand that this is not a place for haste. And now and then another passenger passes by just as unhurried, keeping a comfortable distance, no one sidestepping abruptly, no one pressed flat against the wall. Each person given enough space to exist without collision. The electric light here does more than guide the way. It soothes the mind because there are no sudden dark corners, no stretches of hallway that make you feel lost or forgotten. In that steady rhythm you realize you are living in a very particular moment in history, not because the ship is vast or the ocean immense, but because small things like this smokeless light are quietly changing how people move through the night, how they trust that they will be safe while walking, how they allow their bodies to relax when darkness no longer demands vigilance. At home you may still be used to carefully extinguishing lamps, to the scent of oil, to the sense that darkness always waits just behind the light, but here light leaves no trace, needs no tending. It simply fulfills its role and continues to exist, and it is precisely this quiet presence that makes you feel you are stepping into a new era without needing to understand it rationally. You stop along one stretch of corridor, lean lightly against the wooden wall, draw in a slow breath. No smoke, only clean wood and cool air. And when your body fully accepts that night on this ship is no longer something to be wary of, you begin to hear a very thin, very gentle sound drifting down the corridor ahead. Not voices, not footsteps, but music. And as you turn toward that melody, you understand that the light has guided you far enough. And now, a new morning on the ship is beginning to open, greeted softly by its very first notes. As you leave the steady light of the corridor and take a few more unhurried steps, the first thing that reaches you is not an image, but a sound that does not try to name itself, does not announce a beginning, but appears gently as if It had been there before you ever noticed it. It is the sound of strings, thin and soft, vibrating lightly without echo, without volume, without asking anyone to stop and listen. And precisely because of that, you stop. There is no stage, no rows of chairs, no dedicated spotlight. The musicians stand in a widened section of the corridor, where people still pass by as usual. Violins held close to the body, small wrist movements repeating steadily, like breathing, like a familiar task performed so many times, it no longer requires thought. The music is not introduced. No one says, "Please listen." It simply begins and continues, blending into the ship's morning rhythm, so naturally that you are not even sure when you first heard it. You remain still for a moment, not out of courtesy, but because your body instinctively slows when the sound reaches your ears. It does not excite you, does not quicken your heartbeat, but instead lengthens your breathing, deepens it, as if someone has gently reminded you that this morning does not require haste. Around you a few others pause as well, not forming a circle, not becoming a crowd, each standing in their own place, close enough to share the sound, far enough to remain untouched. An older man leans lightly against the wall, hands in his pockets, his gaze not on the musicians but on the wooden floor, as if the music is entering him by another path. A younger woman holds a child in her arms. The child not understanding the melody, but sensing the calm growing still, looking around with wide eyes. A couple stands side by side, saying nothing, simply sharing the same quiet moment. The music does not tell a grand story, does not try to impress. It repeats familiar rounded melodies, simple enough that your mind does not need to follow, gentle enough that old memories begin to open on their own. Perhaps a distant morning from long ago, when you were younger, when a radio played softly, in the kitchen while someone made coffee, or when you sat in a quiet room and heard music drifting in from somewhere outside. This kind of music does not carry you far away. It carries you back. You realize that here no one demands absolute attention. The musicians play as part of the space, like the light before them. Anyone may stop, anyone may continue walking on, and there is no judgment in that, and it is this freedom that makes the moment feel so easy. A man pulls a small coin from his pocket, steps closer, places it into the wooden box resting beside the musicians, without bowing, without saying thank you, just a very small, very human gesture, like saying, "I received this without words." Then another person does the same, not out of obligation, but because they want to leave a gentle trace, a sign that this moment mattered, that the music did not pass through unseen. You do not rush to follow, you simply observe, and in that observation, you feel something no speech could ever fully explain, that community is not always built through grand promises. Sometimes it is formed by several people standing quietly together, listening to a melody in the morning, each carrying a separate life, yet sharing a single rhythm. The faces of the listeners show no dramatic emotion, no tears, no loud smiles, only softened expressions, features easing as if someone has loosened a very small knot inside them, and that is enough. The music continues, not faster, not slower, not adjusting itself to the number of listeners, holding its own pace. And within that pace, morning on the ship begins to take shape, not through light or movement, but through the feeling of being welcomed. This is not a loud greeting, not a bell announcing a new day, but a very quiet welcome, just enough to say that you are not stepping into today alone. When the final notes dissolve into the air, no one applauds, no one lingers in regret. The musicians simply stop as if they understand their task is complete, and people move on, carrying with them a warmth that is difficult to name. You do the same, walking forward now, no longer standing still in the corridor, yet the music remains somewhere within you like a soft underlayer beneath your thoughts, and in that state when emotion has been touched but not disturbed, when community has been felt without obligation, you begin to notice a faint scent of food drifting through the air, signaling that the morning on this ship offers not only sound but flavor waiting just ahead. As the afterglow of the morning melodies still rests quietly within you, no longer forming distinct sounds, but existing as a warm undercurrent beneath every sensation. You follow the faint drift of food in the air, the scent of warm bread, butter slowly melting, freshly poured hot tea, and the ship seems to know how to guide you to the second-class dining room, where morning light falls evenly through the windows. Not harsh, not bright, just enough to bring out the wood grain of tables and chairs and the simple lines of the room. The space here is neither large nor showy. Tables are arranged neatly with enough distance that no one needs to crowd. Chairs have solid backs, Tabletops are smooth and clean, without excessive shine, and when you pull a chair out to sit, the sound is barely audible, as if the room is accustomed to preserving quiet for slow mornings. Light reflects off white dishes and neatly placed cutlery, and you realize that everything here serves a single purpose: to allow people to eat without tension, without hurry, without the need to check whether they are doing something wrong. You open the menu not with eager curiosity but with a very human familiarity, like reading a list of known comforts and feeling reassured that they are still there. Toast, eggs, oatmeal, bacon, butter, jam, fruit, tea, coffee items meant not to surprise but to stabilize, and it is that stability that lets your breath ease outward. When the food arrives, nothing is rushed. Each movement is slow and measured, as if the servers understand this morning does not need to be pushed. Plates are set down carefully, without clatter or excess sound, and you sense that here, eating is not a moment to get through, but a part of the day that is respected. You cut the bread, hear the soft sound of the crust, spread butter, and feel the warmth dissolve beneath it. Take a sip of tea, as heat moves gently down your throat, and your body responds immediately, not with excitement, but with a deep sense of reassurance, as if each cell has been reminded that today can begin kindly. You eat slowly not because anyone tells you to, but because there is no reason to be fast. Around you, others eat the same way. No raised voices, no urging, only the light touch of spoons against bowls, the quiet shift of chairs, and a shared even rhythm filling the room. In that moment you realize something important. This second-class breakfast exceeds anything you once expected of second class, not because of variety or presentation, but because of the feeling of being treated with care present in every small detail, from the way the light is kept gentle to the spacing between tables that allows privacy to the absence of anything that makes you feel as though you are taking someone else's place. You remember older journeys, hurried meals, tighter dining rooms where people ate quickly just to leave, where noise overwhelmed sensation, and in that soft comparison there is no bitterness, only gratitude that here things have been done differently. The food on the table is more than food. It is a quiet promise that this ship will tend to the basics first, that stability is not a luxury but a foundation, and because of that you finish your meal without worry about the hours ahead, the breakfast having fulfilled its role by placing you in balance. You notice that when the stomach is gently filled, the mind naturally grows, less restless, unnecessary thoughts retreat, replaced by a plain feeling that today can pass without resistance. Food in this moment does more than nourish the body. It anchors you to the present, to the chair beneath you, the wooden table under your hands, the steady motion of the ship beyond. And when you set your spoon down and lightly wipe your hands, you realize you need nothing more. You do not rush to stand. Do not hurry to leave the room. You sit a little longer looking around, and as your gaze moves across other faces, you begin to notice the people sharing this space with you. Strangers sharing the same meal, the same rhythm. And from that gentle observation, the next part of the story begins to form as the meal ends, but a sense of community quietly comes into view. As breakfast slowly comes to a close, and the dining room releases itself from the feeling of ritual, returning to what it truly is, a place where people sit beside one another, naturally, you begin to notice more clearly those sharing the space with you, not with sharp curiosity or a desire to know deeply, but with a light awareness, like sitting in a familiar cafe and realizing there are a few new faces today. The man across from you eats very slowly, carefully, each small bite deliberate, his hands resting neatly on the table when not in use, his voice calm, and even as he exchanges a few polite words with the server, carrying no command, only the habit of someone long accustomed to working with others, patiently. Perhaps he is a teacher or an accountant or someone who has spent years in quiet offices. You do not know, and you do not need to, because what you sense is not his profession but the steady, unhurried rhythm of his life. At the neighboring table, a middle-aged couple sits close together, not speaking constantly, occasionally sharing only a glance or a short sentence. The woman's voice lighter, with a hint of regional tone. The man replying slowly, as though more used to listening than speaking. And, in the way they exist beside one another, you recognize a familiarity built over many years, needing no display. A little farther away sits a younger man, eating faster than the others, not hurried but simply moving with a different energy, his voice slightly higher when speaking to the person next to him. Perhaps from excitement, perhaps because this is his first journey away from home and you feel no irritation. In this, only the coexistence of another pace within the same room. Some people eat alone, not because they are excluded, but because they choose to be. They read the newspaper, or look quietly at their plates, and their solitude carries no sadness, only the careful preservation of a private pause. You begin to understand that around these tables there is no single class, no shared backstory, only a broad middle ground of people, those not wealthy enough to fully separate themselves, yet not struggling enough to shrink inward, arriving from different professions, carrying different accents, yet sharing one simple truth: they are here to move forward through a portion of life. No one asks what you do or where you come from, no one offers too much of their own story. Exchanges remain just enough to acknowledge one another's presence. A comment about the weather, a remark about the meal, a quiet good morning. And it is precisely this balance that makes the room comfortable. You do not need to construct an image of yourself nor defend a social position, because in this moment there is no competition, no comparison. Only people sitting together on a moving ship in the morning. Any sense of loneliness, if it exists at all, softens considerably, not because you have gained new friends, but because you realize you are not the only one who is alone, and that being alone is not something that must be hidden. Small gestures unfold naturally. Someone nudges a chair aside to let another pass. Someone holds the door a second longer. A nod when eyes briefly meet. All actions requiring no thought, yet weaving a thin, almost invisible net of connection. You do not know their names and they do not know yours, but within this breakfast you have shared the same space, the same eating rhythm, the same quiet steadiness, and that, however small, is enough for your body to feel safer. You realize that community is not always formed through deep intimacy. Sometimes it only needs many people agreeing to be beside one another, without demanding anything more. As the meal ends, each person rises in their own time, no one rushing away, no one lingering too long, and you stand as well with the sense that you are leaving a place where you were neither the center nor an outsider. When you step out of the dining room, carrying a light awareness that there are others traveling alongside you, each with their own direction, you feel no need to hold them close, nor to follow after them, because the familiarity that has just formed is enough to ease the mind without binding it. And it is precisely in this state, having grown accustomed to the presence of others without intrusion, that you begin to notice new movements of the ship, new spaces opening ahead where people will meet not only through glances and greetings, but through experiences that feel distinctly modern, distinctly new, waiting for you to discover just beyond the next turn. As the fragile sense of community from the dining room follows you back into the corridor, no longer visible in specific faces or gestures, but lingering as a very light, shared presence, you come upon a smaller, more enclosed space where a few people stand waiting in silence, and it is precisely this silence that makes you pause a moment longer to observe, because here there is something unfamiliar. The metal doors before you are not large, not overwhelming, yet unlike cabin or corridor doors, they carry the promise of movement without requiring you to walk, and when they open softly, almost without sound, you step inside with a few others. No one speaking, no one explaining. Everything unfolding as naturally as if this ship has done this hundreds of times a day. The interior is just spacious enough for several people to stand comfortably. A wooden handrail firmly fixed to the wall, a flat floor, gentle light, and when the doors close behind you there is no feeling of being trapped, only the sensation of being briefly separated from the ship's usual flow. Then the motion begins without jolts or shaking, only a faint shift within your body, like standing on a small boat as the water lifts you slightly and you realize you are moving vertically, something still quite new to many people of this era. You feel no dizziness, no unease, because the movement is slow and even allowing your body to adapt without thought, and that smoothness awakens a gentle curiosity, not about the mechanism, but about how the world is changing so that people can stand still and still rise. In one corner, you notice the elevator boy, small in stature, his uniform neat, one hand near the controls, his expression focused but relaxed. He speaks, little nods when needed, pulls the lever with practiced precision, as if this is not a marvel, but a daily task repeated often enough to become ordinary. You watch him without judgment or pity, with a quiet attentiveness, sensing that within this small space there is a subtle division between those being carried and the one whose job it is to carry them. Yet the division holds no tension, no discomfort, no display of power, only a shared moment of motion. You realize the elevator does not erase social difference, but it softens it, placing it calmly where it belongs without emphasis. And in that moment you do not feel above or below anyone, only that you are within a new era, one in which people are growing accustomed to moving without using their own strength. The motion ends as gently as it began, without impact or surprise. The doors open, new corridor light pours in, and you step out with the others, no one turning back for another look, because once something new is experienced smoothly, it quickly becomes part of ordinary life. Yet within you, a trace of curiosity remains, not enough to stir thought, just enough to remind you that this ship is carrying you not only across the ocean, but through a very particular moment in history where quiet innovations are reshaping how people sense space and their place within it. You continue walking, your pace unchanged, your mind undisturbed, and as you leave the elevator behind and return to more familiar passageways, you realize that this novelty has not awakened you, but instead brought a strange calm, because when the world moves smoothly and quietly, people tend to trust and relax. And it is in that relaxed state, when you are no longer aware of what deck you are on, how high or low, that you begin to feel the presence of open space ahead, where there are no walls or vertical motion, only wind, sky, and the broad, steady breathing of the ocean waiting for you to step out. As you leave the quiet enclosed spaces of the ship's interior and open the door leading out onto the deck, the first thing that reaches you is not an image, but the air, a cool current of wind, just strong enough to wake you without making your body tense, carrying with it a faint scent of salt, smell of water that feels wide and deep, completely different from the wood and artificial light behind you, and you stand still for a few seconds, not overwhelmed, but giving your body a moment to adjust to this sudden openness. Before you, the ocean stretches out in a pale grey tone, not deep blue, not sparkling, just a vast surface moving slowly, small waves lifting and falling like the steady breathing of a massive being that has no need to prove its strength. The morning sky holds the same gentle grey, no heavy clouds, no harsh sun, light spreading evenly through space, creating no focal point, pulling your gaze in no particular direction, and it is precisely this lack of emphasis that frees your eyes to drift from the thin, blurred line where sea and sky meet, to the nearer water cut softly by the ship's bow, forming long, parallel trails of waves. The rhythm of the ship beneath your feet is clearer here, not through jolts, but through a smooth, even motion, like standing on ground that breathes, and you realize your body has already adjusted, knees loosening, shoulders dropping, breath slowing without conscious effort. You do not speak, do not look for anyone to share the moment with, because this is not something that needs to be expressed, only accompanied. And in that silence, you feel much smaller than the space around you, yet this smallness carries no fear, only relief, like setting down a heavy weight and realizing you no longer have to carry it. The ocean asks nothing of you, poses no questions, offers no answers. It simply exists, wide and steady, and that steadiness becomes the backdrop against which your mind quiets, any thoughts drifting through lightly, never settling. You rest lightly against the railing, your hand on the cool metal, feeling the chill seep slowly into your skin. Not sharp, not uncomfortable, just enough to remind you that you are present here in a morning at sea. Far off, there is nothing remarkable, no other ships, no low-flying birds, only open space, and you realize you need nothing more to feel complete, because this emptiness itself is enough to fill you. From time to time, others step out onto the deck, taking up different spots, not gathering, not speaking, each keeping a private distance, yet you know you are sharing something together, not through words, but through a shared presence before the ocean, creating a quiet, unusual sense of community where people do not need direct interaction to feel less alone. The wind continues steady and cool, carrying the soft sound of water brushing against the hull, not forming a clear rhythm, but enough to let everything else fall silent. And you notice that in this moment you are not thinking about where you are going, nor about where you have come from. You are simply standing, watching, letting time pass without measuring it. The ocean here feels like a natural meditation, requiring no posture, no concentration, only inviting you to remain long enough for its rhythm to soften your own, and you accept the invitation without effort. As you breathe in, cool air fills your lungs. As you breathe out, your shoulders lower a little more, each breath following the next without counting, without control. You sense yourself within something immense, yet not consumed by it, because the ship beneath you remains steady, moving forward, carrying you without asking anything in return. This moment holds no strong emotion, neither joy nor sadness, only a rare neutrality in which you do not need to react to the world. And within that neutrality, your body begins to rest more deeply, even as you stand. You do not know how long you have been there. Time here has no clear shape, dissolving into wind and waves, and when you finally let your eyes leave the horizon and turn back toward the entrance, stepping slowly inside, you carry with you a thin but enduring stillness, like a light mist settling over the reven mind. And as you re-enter the ship, as the morning deck closes quietly behind you, you begin to notice the faint signs of an approaching pause, subtle shifts in movement, unfamiliar sounds, signaling that this calm passage at sea is nearing. Another threshold where the ship will briefly stop, and new people will come aboard carrying stories of their own. As you carry the stillness of the morning deck back inside the ship, with the cool trace of sea wind lingering lightly on your skin, and your breathing still slowed by the rhythm of the waves, you begin to sense a subtle change in the Yalman movement around you, not an abrupt stop, but a deliberate easing, like a gentle hand placed on your shoulder to signal that it is time to pause. The ship no longer moves forward as steadily as before. The deep pulse of the engines below softens the sound of water against the hull, shifts in tone, and even without any loud announcement, your body understands that something is happening, a very brief stop carrying quiet significance. Through windows and along the deck, land appears faintly, neither fully near nor far, just enough to confirm that the outside world still exists alongside this journey. And then small tenders begin to approach, gliding slowly across the grey water, one by one, unhurried and without noise. The scene brings neither excitement nor a sense of rupture. It feels like the ship taking a breath, a moment in which the journey opens itself to another layer of people. When new passengers begin boarding from Queenstown, there is no cheering, no sweeping waves of farewell, only careful footsteps, worn suitcases carried with both hands, cloth bags frayed at the corners, small wooden trunks bearing the marks of many roads already travelled. You stand at a distance, neither too close nor too far, close enough to see without intruding, and what reaches you is not their number but their eyes. Eyes holding neither clear fear nor bright joy, but something harder to name, a quiet blend of hope, fatigue, and acceptance. Some look around the ship with muted wonder, not overwhelmed, but realizing they are standing before something larger than their familiar lives. Others lower their heads for a long moment as they step onto the deck, as if leaving something behind. Without turning back, others grip the hand beside them, without speaking, holding presence as an anchor. Their belongings are few, yet each carries the imprint of time: a faded suitcase, a cord tied and retied, an old coat folded neatly, and you realize these objects are not merely possessions, but the remains of a life compressed enough to pass through this threshold. On the same ship, you and they occupy different places, not because anyone has chosen comparison, but because life arranges itself this way, and in this moment, that layering creates no cold distance, only a quietly accepted reality. You see no envy, no contempt, only a gentle awareness, as if everyone understands that each person carries a journey of their own, and every journey has its weight. You may notice that those who have just boarded will move to different decks, eat in different rooms, sleep in different spaces, yet right now, as the ship pauses to receive them all, share the same point, the same stretch of deck, the same suspended breath. No one tells their story, no one explains why they left, no one speaks of what was lost or what might be gained, and it is precisely this silence that makes the moment more human than any words could, allowing each person to keep their story intact without having to present it. You stand there, neither joining nor withdrawing, simply witnessing, and in that witnessing you understand that this is not a tragedy nor a dramatic turning point, but a very real crossing of the world, where people from different beginnings step onto one ship and move toward a future whose shape is still unknown. When boarding ends, the tenders pull away as slowly as they arrived, the water closing behind them, and the ship gradually resumes its familiar motion. No applause, no audible relief, only a faint sense that something important has just taken place without needing to be marked. You turn and leave the deck, carrying with you the image of those quietly hopeful eyes, not to analyze or dwell on, but to let them settle inside you like a thin layer of sediment, knowing that this journey does not need grand climaxes to be profound, only moments like these where people meet briefly and then separate again, each continuing onward. And as you step back into the calm interior of the ship, as outside sounds slowly seal away, you begin to feel another kind of slowness waiting for you. No longer the movement of the ocean or the pause of the world, but a more enclosed, quieter space where time will dissolve gently, where you can sit down, open a book, and allow everything you have just witnessed to sink in without needing a name. After leaving the quiet point of crossing at Queenstown, as those hopeful gazes recede like a thin wave, folding back into the ocean of memory, you step into another space of the ship, one without obvious motion, without the distant pulse of engines or the sounds of the outside world, leaving only a carefully arranged stillness, the library. The room is not large and not showy, the ceiling low enough to hold warmth, the dark wood-panelled walls smoothed by time and human touch, soft grey light falling from high windows, indirect and gentle, more like a cloudy afternoon than dark, morning or night, making it impossible to tell exactly where you are in the day. Upholstered armchairs are scattered without rigid order, each angled toward its own pocket of privacy, enough to keep you from being seen too clearly enough to feel protected, and when you choose a chair near the window and lower yourself into it slowly, your body understands at once that this is not a place to stay alert but a place to drift. You reach for a book on the low shelf beside you, without searching long, because here every choice leads in the same direction. Hard-bound volumes with thick paper, the scent of old ink mingling with wood and fabric to create a smell that is difficult to name, yet strangely familiar, like rooms that have witnessed more hours of silence than speech. You open a Sherlock Holmes book not to follow the case or remember details, but because these words are familiar to many, gentle enough to cause no tension, steady enough that your mind does not need to stay on guard. Lines move evenly before your eyes, asking nothing, pushing nothing, and you realize you are not reading sentence by sentence so much as letting the rhythm of language become a background for the settling within you. The grey light beyond the window does not change, offering no sign of the sun rising or falling, and you feel no impulse to check the time because there is no clock here, and even if there were, it would no longer matter. The chair supports your back, the armrests soften beneath your arms, the book rests comfortably on your lap, and these small details combine into a rare sensation, the sense that you do not need to go anywhere for an undefined while. From time to time, others enter the library, their footsteps so light you notice them only by a subtle shift in the air. They choose a chair, sit, open a book, and then dissolve into the shared quiet, no lingering looks, no intrusion into another's space, and it is this unspoken respect that makes the library a safe place to disappear. You stop thinking of the ship as a vehicle, stop thinking of the ocean or the destination. All of that withdraws for now, making room for an in-between state, where you are not fully awake and not yet asleep, where time is not divided into minutes or hours, but exists as a slow, even current. Pages continue to turn without a fixed rhythm. Sometimes you pause on a passage, not because it is better, but because your eyes need rest. Sometimes you realize you have passed several pages without recalling their content, and instead of irritation, a light relief arrives, because when memory loosens its grip, the mind is allowed to let go. The only sounds are the faint brush of paper, the soft shift of a chair as someone changes position, the steady breathing of people sharing the same state as you, neither fully asleep nor fully awake, simply drifting. You do not know how long it has been since you sat down, and you no longer feel any need to know, because in this space, time is no longer something to manage, only a blurred backdrop behind every sensation. This is where the ship allows you to forget that you are moving, allows you to forget that the world outside continues to turn, and this forgetting is a profound gift, especially for those who have lived long enough to know that remembering is not always better than forgetting. When you set the book aside, not because it is finished, but because your hand naturally relaxes, you lean your head back and look up at the wooden ceiling, the grey light still unchanged, and in that moment you understand that this library is not merely a place for books, but a pause designed for human beings, a place where quiet is not emptiness, but a soft material surrounding you. This is the journey's lullaby heart, needing no song or melody, only permission for time to dissolve without leaving a trace. And when you finally stand, not because you are called or required elsewhere, but because your body has rested enough in this half-dream state, you carry that slowness with you as you leave the library, knowing the hours ahead will not need haste. That even when you return to conversation and meals, a deep calm remains within you, newly laid here in the room where time quietly melted away. As you leave the library, carrying with you the feeling that time has dissolved like a thin mist, resting gently in the mind, lunch arrives not with excitement, but as a natural continuation, as if the body, having rested long enough quietly, knows it is time for another rhythm of life. Not too quiet, not loud either. The midday dining room lacks the formality of dinner and the careful tenderness of breakfast. The light is a little brighter now, clearer, yet still kept soft. The tables and chairs familiar, the spacing unchanged, and you sit down without much deliberation, because everywhere shares one important thing: no one needs to perform. Lunch is served simply without ceremony, familiar dishes that are filling, warm and sufficient to carry a person into the afternoon without heaviness, and you realize that here the meal itself is not the center of attention, it is merely the backdrop for ordinary conversation to unfold. Around you, people begin to talk, not all at once, not everyone participating, just small fragments of exchange scattered at first, then slowly forming a shared atmosphere. Someone mentions politics in Europe, the tone calm, not argumentative, offered as information rather than debate, as if the outside world exists at a distance far enough not to disturb the table. Another responds with a nod and a general remark, not going deeper, because no one is here to argue. Someone brings up war, but the word carries no tension placed into conversation, as something that happened before or as a vague, distant possibility, not something touching the daily lives of those seated here. You listen with a strange awareness, because you, as the one hearing this story, know more than the people speaking. You know what history will bring. You know that this confidence in peace will not last, but they do not, and that difference creates a very thin, delicate layer of feeling. They speak of the future calmly, of new opportunities of work, of lives restarting elsewhere. No one speaks of fear, no one of loss, not because they are naive, but because at this moment they have every reason to believe the world is moving forward in a sensible way. You feel no urge to correct them, no need to react, because your role is not to warn but to witness, and in witnessing you sense something deeply human. People live best in the moments before they know what is about to go wrong. Conversation continues, sometimes shifting to very small things: what the weather might be like in New York, whether rent will be expensive, where children will go to school, questions ordinary, close, real. And as you listen, you realize that these simple concerns are what truly make up life, far more than the grand events recorded in history books. Voices remain low, no one tries to dominate, each person speaks just long enough before yielding space, as if everyone understands that this lunch does not require a leader. You eat slowly, listening as you eat, not to remember details but to feel the rhythm unfolding around you, a rhythm of trust, steadiness and unhurried presence, and your body continues to soften in response. In that moment you clearly sense the difference between knowledge and experience, between knowing what will happen and living inside a moment where it does not yet exist, and you realize that history is not only what has occurred, but also what people believed was going to happen. No one in this room thinks they are living through something special. They believe they are simply living an ordinary day, eating an ordinary lunch, speaking ordinary words, and it is precisely this ordinariness that makes the moment more precious than any climax. As lunch gradually ends, conversation fades naturally with it, no conclusions, no formal closing, everything dissolving as gently as it began. You set down your cutlery, wipe your hands, stand with the others, carrying not information but a deep sense that social life in its purest form does not need to know the future in order to unfold fully. And as you leave the dining room, letting the softened midday light guide you back toward the open spaces of the ship, you carry no heaviness about what lies ahead, only the calm of what is, and within that calm, the afternoon waits to open in. Slower, wider moments, where people will no longer sit around tables to talk but share presence outdoors, quietly, evenly, and with breath slowing just a little more. As you leave the enclosed atmosphere of the lunchroom and step back onto the deck, the afternoon has already settled into a different rhythm, no longer carrying the quiet, grey stillness of morning, nor yet the formality of evening, but resting gently between the two as a particularly comfortable stretch of time where people are not required to do much beyond simply being present. On deck, rows of deck chairs are neatly arranged, facing the sea, each already draped with a folded wool blanket in muted colors that do not call attention to themselves. And when you choose an empty chair, spread the blanket and lower yourself slowly into place. Your body seems to be given back a portion of the energy spent earlier in the day. The afternoon breeze is lighter now, no longer cold as in the morning, just enough to keep the air moving, carrying a faint trace of the sea, and the light has shifted softer and more angled, without glare or sharpness, allowing every shape on the deck to lose its hard edges. You pull the blanket up to your chest, not because of chill, but for the feeling of being held, and as your back settles into the chair and your head tilts slightly back, you realize this posture is entirely different from standing at the rail. In the morning it does not invite thought, it invites rest. Around you, children begin to play, not loudly, not running wildly, only simple games, tossing a small ball, chasing one another for a few steps before stopping, laughing softly, and there is no urgency in their laughter because no one is rushing anywhere. Adults sit in pairs or small groups, never clustered too tightly, chairs spaced far enough that conversations do not overlap, and the talk itself moves slowly without debate, without the need to reach conclusions, just fragments of life suited. To an afternoon, someone recounts a previous journey, someone mentions the weather back home, someone listens in silence, and that silence is not treated as absence, but as a natural part of the exchange. You do not need to join in, nor do you need to withdraw. You simply lie there, letting the sounds of life unfold around you like a soft underlayer. The wind brushing past the railing, the wool blanket whispering against the chair, as someone shifts position, the distant even wash of waves against hull, all of it blending into a rhythm so steady it allows your body to relax a little more with each passing moment. The children grow tired, laughter fading, one is wrapped in a blanket and leans against an adult, eyes half closed, and the image needs no explanation. It simply reminds you that afternoon is the time when energy naturally turns inward. You look at the faces around you, none standing out, none seeking attention, and it is precisely this lack of display that creates a particular sense of community, one where each person is allowed to exist without proving their role. This is not a lasting community, you know that. You may never see these people again after the voyage, but in this moment you are sharing the same afternoon, relying on the same ship, letting time pass without measuring it, and that is enough to soften the loneliness people sometimes carry for years. You pull the blanket a little higher, not from cold, but because your body is slipping into a deeper state of rest. Breath steady and long, and you realize you are no longer following the conversations around you. They have dissolved into background sound, requiring no understanding, no memory. The ocean is still there, but you do not need to look directly at it, only to know that it surrounds the ship supporting this journey, just as the afternoon supports people after the earlier hours. The light continues to tilt without announcement very gradually, and in that gradualness you feel a natural restoration, not through sleep but through being allowed to do nothing. The afternoon on deck asks nothing of you, does not demand experience or memory, it simply offers a space to exist, and within that space energy returns in the gentlest way. When you open your eyes again after some time, how long you cannot say, you see that many people are still there. Some have risen to stroll slowly, others remain seated with blankets over their shoulders, and you feel no need to change your state because everything remains as it should be. This is a temporary community formed not by shared purpose but by shared time, and precisely because it is temporary, it carries no obligation, no weight, only a very human presence. You remain there a little longer, letting the afternoon complete its role, allowing your body to recover enough, your mind to settle enough, and when the light begins to take on a different tone and the air grows stiller, you sense that life is shifting into a new phase, slower and more ceremonial, when people will leave the deck, change their clothes, and together step into the evening, carrying with them the steadiness and quiet sense of belonging that this afternoon has already, without words, prepared. As the afternoon on deck slowly comes to a close, as the slanting light softens every edge, and the wind grows just a little cooler, you leave the deck chair, fold the blanket carefully, as a small familiar habit, and return to your cabin with the quiet sense that evening is arriving not as an event but as a ritual repeated countless times in human life. In the cabin you prepare for dinner without showy excitement, moving instead with a calm, steady rhythm, the jacket hung neatly, the shoes lightly polished, hair smoothed into place, not to impress, but to mark the transition from a relaxed afternoon to an evening shaped by order. There is no hurry, because no one is urging you on, and it is precisely this lack of haste that gives each gesture meaning, as if your body understands that this preparation is not about display, but about restoring the stability so deeply needed after a long day. When you step out into the corridor, the evening light is softer than daylight, no longer grey and not overly golden, adjusted to bring out wood fabric and the slow movements of people making their way toward the dining room. The dining room opens into an atmosphere entirely different from lunch, not noisy, not scattered, tables set more carefully, white tablecloths laid out, glasses placed exactly where they should be, lamps reflecting gently on metal and crystal, creating a sense of formality that needs no explanation. You sit down, not because you belonged here before, but because the space itself is designed so that once seated you naturally feel that you do. Champagne is poured quietly, no sharp pop bubbles rising and settling almost immediately, as if even the drink understands that this evening requires no excitement, only gentle support for the mood. The menu arrives, not long, not overly elaborate, but sufficient to suggest that this meal is an anchor in the day, a moment people can lean on to know that things are unfolding within a familiar order. You read it slowly, not because the choice is difficult, but because you allow yourself to enjoy the simple stability of having a choice at all, something small yet essential to a sense of ease. When the courses are served, each plate is set down carefully without rush or confusion, and in that space you realize that this dinner nourishes not only the body but a deeper layer of the mind. The part that needs to know the world still, holds rituals capable of keeping things from slipping into chaos. Around you, others eat, slowly, speak just enough, no one laughing too loudly, no one retreating into silence, and this balance creates a shared rhythm that feels comfortable, allowing everyone to be present without strain. You sense that while social distinctions have not disappeared, they have softened because ritual has done its work, placing everyone within the same frame, the same tempo, the same manner of being, so no one needs to defend their position. Champagne, food, light linens all merge into a very specific feeling, belonging to an order larger than yourself, and it is this belonging that brings a deep sense of calm. You do not need to know who designed this ritual or why it works. It is enough to feel that when people sit together, eat together, and move within a shared rhythm, the mind grows less restless. In the quiet conversations at the table, distant topics fade away, politics and the wider world no longer surface. Evening naturally closing the day, talk turning to smaller, closer things, ordinary remarks of daily life. And you do not need to join in, only to listen and sense that you are part of a community formed not through deep intimacy, but through shared ceremony. When dessert arrives, you are no longer hungry, yet you partake because this is the final arc of a circle, and completing that circle brings a gentle sense of wholeness. You take a last sip, set down your spoon, wipe your hands, and realize that throughout this entire dinner, you never once worried about time, never checked a clock, never thought about where to go next, because the ritual itself held you exactly where you needed to be. As you rise and leave the dining room, the evening beyond is quieter, the light lower footsteps slower, and you carry with you a clear feeling of stability, as if this meal has quietly reordered something inside you after a day full of impressions. You feel no need for more stimulation, no desire for added activity, because the rest of the evening has already taken shape, slower, deeper, turned inward. And as you step into the corridor, letting the warm light guide you onward, you sense that the next space will no longer revolve around food or shared ritual, but around stretched time, fewer words and people sitting together in a deeper stillness where a cigar, a glass of cognac, and long silences will continue to hold you in the very slow embrace of night. After the formal dinner, when ritual has completed its task and left within you a profound sense of stability, you do not hurry back to your cabin, nor do you seek any new activity. You simply follow the slow-moving flow of people toward another part of the ship where the light is lower, voices are fewer, and time itself seems permitted to stretch without justification. The smoking room. The door opens softly without sudden sound, and the moment you step inside you feel a clear shift in the air, the warm, rounded scent of cigars spreading evenly, not sharp, not heavy, blending with the smell of wood, leather, and a trace of cognac, creating a distinctive evening atmosphere meant for lingering rather than departure. The amber lights are dimmed, not bright enough to sharpen detail, but sufficient to soften every edge. Thick leather chairs arranged in small clusters, not facing a center, not forming a stage, but opening private pockets where one may sit without drawing attention. You choose an empty chair, the leather cool at first, then quickly warming to your body, and as you lean back, the sensation is entirely different from the dining chair or the deck chair. It does not hold you upright. It allows you to sink, slightly as if your body has finally been granted full permission to let go. A glass of cognac is placed on the low table beside you, without invitation or explanation. You take a very small sip, warmth spreading slowly through your throat, not stimulating, only creating a gentle expansion in the chest, and you realize that everything here is designed to slow things down. Around you, other men sit scattered, some holding cigars, some only their glasses, some nothing at all, eyes resting on the open space ahead, no one staring, no one seeking attention, and it is precisely this lack of need that creates the room's calm. Conversations unfold slowly, discontinuously, without debate, sometimes only a short sentence followed by a long silence, and that silence troubles no one. Instead, it is accepted as a natural part of being together. You listen without joining in, voices low-paced evenly, no one speaking loudly, no one laughing hard, and here speech exists not to convey information but simply to confirm human presence. Time begins to lose its familiar shape, no longer divided into before and after. You do not know how long you have been seated, and this brings no anxiety because there is no schedule to follow. The amber light does not change, the air does not change, the scent does not change, and this steadiness allows your mind to release its grip on time, drifting into a deeper state where you are no longer thinking much about today nor about tomorrow. At times, a story begins not to lead anywhere but like a small ripple across still water. Someone mentions a city, an old journey, a distant memory. The story is never finished, carries no climax, dissolves midway, and yields to silence, and no one feels the need to continue it. You realize this is a particular kind of meditation, not solitude but meditation among others, where the presence of people does not disturb the calm but deepens the sense of safety. Leather chairs, amber light, cigar smoke, cognac warmth all combine to form a space where no one must explain who they are or prove anything. They only need to sit and exist, and that existence is accepted without effort. You feel your body slipping into a deeper rest, breathing long, and even shoulders releasing, jaw unclenching, and even with your eyes open, you know the final layers of the day are quietly closing within you. Time in the smoking room does not pass. It thickens, stretches, as if each minute were compressed into a dense block of stillness, and you remain inside that block without resistance. No one urges you to rise, no one announces an ending. People leave when they are ready, slowly, naturally, and when you finally stand, set down your glass and step out of the room, you carry no sense of loss, because what you experienced was not an event, but a state, and that state remains with you. Outside, the corridor is quieter, the light lower, footsteps fewer, and you sense that the rest of the evening will no longer require words or community, but will return you to private space where you may sit alone with the stillness, so carefully prepared throughout the day, perhaps write a final letter, or simply remain quiet for a while, before allowing the night to close in the most natural way possible. As you leave the smoking room carrying within you a dense, warm quiet like an invisible blanket laid gently over the mind, the evening corridor ahead is no longer a place for observation or thought. It is simply a passage leading you back to yourself. The lights, lower footsteps, fewer each movement now, instinctive rather than intentional. You return to your cabin without hurry and without concern for time because the day has completed its work and all that remains is for body and mind to close together. Inside, the small but familiar space welcomes you with a private calm. The little wooden desk beside the bed, the single chair, the writing paper and pen, already set out as if the ship knows that at this hour people often wish to say a few words to those who are not here. You sit, draw the chair closer, open the paper, and in that moment you do not need to think about what to write because the lines arrive naturally, not to recount anything grand, but to keep a connection with the life waiting across the ocean. You write to family, to loved ones, to a distant home, not with important news, only to say you are well, that the journey is peaceful, that the ship is steady, that everything moves slowly and evenly. The words are simple, unadorned, carrying reassurance, and in their simplicity, your hand loosens, your script slows and steadies as if writing has ceased to be communication and become a ritual that gently closes the day. When you set the pen down and fold the letter, you feel no need to add more because what needed saying has been said and the rest requires no language. You stand and leave the cabin once more, not to search, but to return to a place that has held you quietly through the day, the library. At this hour it is calmer than before, fewer people, the grey light dimmed, the armchairs unchanged, and when you sit, familiarity returns at once, as if your body recognizes this as a safe place for one last release before sleep. You do not take up a book now because reading is no longer needed. You sit back, let your eyes rest on the open space ahead, without focusing on any detail, and notice that the mind no longer produces a steady stream of thought. It has thinned, slowed, opened into long pauses. Time here has lost its meaning. You do not know how long you sit, and you do not need to know because nothing waits ahead. Tomorrow does not yet require preparation. It will arrive when it must. In this state you think lightly of the next day, not in plans, but in feeling a sense that it too will have its own rhythm, its light, its meals, its slow footsteps, and the thought brings no worry, only quiet certainty. You leave the library without regret, knowing the stillness you found there has followed you back, and now rests within, and when you return to your cabin for the final time of the day, every movement is reduced to what is necessary. You change into sleepwear slowly without sound, as if honoring your own quiet. The light is lowered, the space narrows to the simplest acts. You lie down your back, meeting the mattress, the blanket drawn up, neither heavy nor light, and in that moment you no longer think of the ship, the ocean, or the journey, because all have fulfilled their purpose for today. Your breathing lengthens, deepens, steadies without effort, the body finding a resting rhythm long known in human history. You sense the ship still moving, gentle and even like a lullaby without sound, and the feeling brings deep reassurance because something larger than you continues to operate, allowing you to rest. There is no need for a conclusion or a stated meaning because life does not work that way. It simply continues, pauses, and continues again. And here in this quiet cabin, as the last light is switched off and all sounds recede, there is nothing more you must do. Only let the eyelids grow heavy, let the breath lead, let what remains of the day dissolve slowly, and then everything rests there. From the long, unhurried journey you have just moved through, the message that remains, in the end, does not live in events, not in a specific historical backdrop, and not in the meanings later generations may attach to memory. The most important message, quiet yet enduring, is that human beings always need small, stable, humane structures in order to rest within a moving world. The people in this story do not live in excess, but they live within an ordered rhythm, waking in a safe space, eating at regular hours, speaking just enough, resting where rest is allowed, and ending the day in quiet. And it is this rhythm that creates a sense of sufficiency even when material abundance is limited. Looking back, we realize that what truly reassures people is not control over the future, but having a present they can lean on. Regular meals, evening rituals, and calm shared spaces are not merely comforts, they are psychological anchors that tell us we are in the right place at the right pace. In modern life, we often lose these anchors. We eat in haste, sleep too late, work without boundaries, and carry a constant pressure to know what comes next. The story gently reminds us that peace does not come from knowing more or moving faster, but from slowing down within familiar frames. Another lesson, subtle yet profound, is about community. Community here is not built through deep bonds or grand words, but through shared presence, sitting in the same space, sharing the same stretch of time, being silent together without explanation. It reminds us that today we often do not need more advice, analysis, or fixing. Sometimes we only need to be near others in the safety of quiet. And finally, the story leaves a very tender truth, accepting the finiteness of a single day. A day does not need to end in achievement or grand meaning. Some days only need to be fully lived, then gently allowed to stop. Writing a few lines, tidying the space, dimming the lights, and letting the body rest, this permission to stop is an ancient wisdom that modern life is slowly forgetting. Thank you for staying until the final moments of this journey. If these slow words helped you breathe a little deeper, feel a little lighter, or ease more naturally into sleep, please tap like, share this video with someone who may also need rest, and subscribe to the channel so we can continue slowing down with history together, not to understand more but to feel calmer before sleep.